Hey TV fans, Bored Now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 2 Episode 18. It is called Fearful Symmetry. Full spoilers for this one once again. And this episode originally aired on February the 24th, 1995. It's directed by James Whitmore Jr. It's written by Steve DeJeanette, a name I've not seen before on the X-Files, so I'm not sure if he did any other episodes besides this. I can't think of another one. Got 16.5 in the Nelson ratings, and it holds a 6.4 out of 10 on average on IMDb. Elephant mysteriously disappears from its cage at a local zoo, and it ends up causing havoc on a highway. And there seems to be this pattern going on with animals at this zoo, and Mulder believes that the mystery could be linked to alien, that maybe alien abduction. Noah's Ark type theory later on in the episode, where he claims that maybe the aliens are using them for that kind of purpose. His suspicions are risen even more when later on in the episode they do like a DNA test on the elephant in question. This zoo, supposedly the animals can't get pregnant, like certain animals can't get pregnant. Orangutan called Sophie, who the woman who runs the zoo with her, she has formed like an attachment to this orangutan, and she says she can't get pregnant, but it turns out later on in the episode that she's mysteriously pregnant, and that also the elephant who originally escaped also is. So there's all this mystery and intrigue, and that just adds to Mulder's theory that maybe there's been interference from like alien life forms. Billa, who, as I said, runs the zoo and has formed an attachment to this chimpanzee, this orangutan, Sophie, and she very much believes the way to like look after the animals is to keep them in the zoo environment. That's the best way to like give them treatment, to like foster them. Whereas you've got this fringe group who's run by this character Kyle, and they're very much anti the zoo system. They're very much like animals should not exactly roam free, but then they shouldn't be kept in cages. Like they should be in their own habitat. They should be out in nature. But because they have these feelings, and because they have the feel of like a fringe group who potentially would take quite drastic actions. And there's a little bit of history we find out later on with Kyle and with Willa, so the suspicion is a little bit on them that they could be the one who are letting the animals run free, letting them escape. Scully particularly is quite suspicious, because when she goes to interview Kyle and sees certain things like certain like equipment, she is quite suspicious, whereas Mulder, being Mulder, is very much pushing the alien angle. Then gets called like a bit of a bad episode, like a bit of a stinker, and I think it doesn't generally get that much rated by X-Files fans. And I think part of that might be because it is mostly quite forgettable. Like, it does suffer from being a bit sort of bland and not exactly generic, but just a bit bland. Like, it could do with a little bit more of a personality. Probably also it suffers from maybe not being one thing or the other. Like, maybe it's caught between these two extremes where you've got a suggested alien plot, or like, because the opening is a little bit out there. It's definitely a little bit different, and I think the opening of the episode with the elephant on the highway does quite a good job of creating intrigue and like giving you an X-Files style feel, and it's like, okay, this is a bit different. This sets up a pretty good mystery. Some of the themes to do with like animal rights and these different groups, and because it definitely is something which has become quite a hot topic in real life, and I can imagine definitely in the early 90s it was starting to become a hot topic, because although in general, like, zoos tend to be popular and tend to have like good reputations as like they treat the animals right and they give them a good environment, there's definitely people who feel very strongly the other way, and they do feel like keeping them in cages, regardless of how they're treated when they're there, like, then that's not right. Then they should be off in nature. The thing I do appreciate about the episode, and maybe some people overlook that side because, especially since it is the early 90s, I do appreciate them bringing up this issue in a show like the X-Files. But as I said, I think the episode struggles to make it that compelling overall, and overall, I think it could have done with a bit more flavour. Like, I don't think it's the best Mulder and Scully episode. Like, Mulder doesn't have that many, like, really good lines. Probably his best stuff is, like, the David Copperfield stuff near the start, where he's, like, kind of theorising different things about what could have happened to the elephant, and he does make this crack about how he saw David Copperfield make the Statue of Liberty disappear on TV when Scully's like running through the various options. Scully has a stronger episode than Mulder, because I do like the stuff with her being very suspicious and very, very tough, like very cynical when it comes to like the leader of the fringe group, Kyle. One of them gets like killed by, I think it's a tiger. Like he has gone to the zoo, and it does seem like, okay, he is there to maybe try and release the tiger, stir up trouble. Well, claims that he didn't send him, and he has no like knowledge, but he does seem quite cold and callous in that scene, which is something Scully picks up on. And so that stuff with Scully I do quite like. I like how she takes a strong stance and has a strong feeling that there's something not right about this guy and his group. And I do love how she storms out and says to Mulder, that guy's really starting to piss me off, because it's right there. Her feelings are right there, and it's very raw. Jane Atkinson, who plays Willa, gives a pretty solid performance as well, and there's enough in that character where there's definitely, she's quite a complex character and there's definitely flaws, but there's enough to what she brings where you can see, okay, she definitely has the best intentions of the creatures in mind. She definitely has this bond to Sophie. She definitely has like a lot of passion, a lot of like, she really believes in this stuff. But then there's certain actions throughout the episode that feel a bit misguided. So I think there's enough on her side. I'm not so sure on the other side. Like maybe the Kyle character comes off feeling a bit two-dimensional and a bit of a cliche. The actor, I think, does a pretty good job, but I just got really strong villain vibes, and maybe that's just because they were always pushing him as like a red herring, and maybe they just pushed that a bit too hard. But yeah, I never really felt he was as interesting or as fully rounded as Willa. But as I said, I think overall the episode just doesn't have like enough personality, and it probably doesn't run enough with one thing or the other. There's certain things in it where the budget really shows at times. Like, I think overall they do quite well with what they've got, but like the scene really late on in the episode where Mulder ends up in the cage with like Sophie, and it's after they've confiscated her from from Willa because things have come to a head and you've got this other guy who's been killed. So the zoo is basically shutting down because it's mentioned earlier in the episode. Sophie is like a big attraction, and without her the zoo could, because the zoo are struggling financially apparently, so without her it's implied that it may have to close its doors. But this is like one straw too many when this other guy gets killed. Mulder, when he's chasing up this lead later on, and ends up in the cage with Sophie, and it's sort of suggesting that Sophie could do some damage to him, that she's been manipulated by something. That scene, it showed a little bit, then it was quite cheap, and the way Sophie looked and the actions of the orangutan in that scene, that came off as a little bit off, and where the budget was starting to things play out in the episode in the back half with this other guy is another reason why it's not a particularly good episode. I think in the end, things that just play out just feel a bit, seen that before, a bit little bit predictable and cliche, fell into this bland territory, and things that were happening just felt a bit too obvious and on the nose maybe. One funny thing is that at one point we get the lone gunmen in the episode, and Mulder is talking to them like over like it's pre-Skype, but over a video type call. So I guess what you would say is like the early days of what Skype would become. But there's only two of them. The blonde-haired member of the lone gunmen isn't there, so I wondered if... And one of them gives like an excuse in the scene, says he's too paranoid about being filmed. I wonder if that's the excuse to hide the fact that the actor is not available. Like maybe he had a film that he was filming. It is unusual not to have all three of them when they do appear. I don't think it deserves a lot of the hate it gets. Like, I don't think it's as bad as many people make out. Like, I wouldn't say it's a stinker. Like, the next episode from memory, I think is worse than this. And there's definitely been other episodes that I'd say, okay, that's a real stinker. I just don't feel that strongly about this. Like, there are definitely good things in the episode, and it's probably solid enough, but in the end it just suffers from being a bit too bland. And although there's good ideas in the episode, like by the end of the episode they just don't make it that interesting to watch. So it's a tough one to really rate and talk about. I guess in the end I'll go about 5.5 because I don't think it tips over into that, oh, it's really bad territory, but at the same time it is a little bit middling and doesn't quite do enough to like tip it up to, okay, this is actually really solid. A TV show from around this time, which again falls into this kind of vintage network TV style era, and that is The West Wing, and I'm doing that at the moment on the channel. I actually just started that. It's a show for the new year. I've done the first couple of episodes, so if you're a West Wing fan and want to check out those reviews, then the first two are up right now, and I'm trying to keep a weekly schedule for that moving forward, at least for a while. And on sort of a lighter, more quirky type note, if you enjoy Gilmore Girls, that's another slightly older show which I do on the channel. From time to time, it's a little bit on and off that, but sometimes my co-host Rachel also joins me for that reviews, but I'm sort of in the middle of season 2. Keep watching TV, support me, patreon.com/borednow. That's for just $1 a month, or you can also sign up to channel memberships with 3 different tiers for that, and I'll link that in the description. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. More X-Files soon, and see you later.